Welcome to Off the Wire, the podcast that helps you curb your cybersecurity risk and tackle technology challenges. I'm Tanner and I'm joined by Anthony. We're two IT executives with 35 years of experience. Let's start the show. All right, welcome back to Off the Wire podcast. Today we're going to talk a little bit about evaluations. So, technology evaluations in general, hardware, software, different vendors, that kind of thing. But before we jump in, if you're not already subscribed to us, please go ahead and do that and click the bell, especially on YouTube. It lets you know whenever we have a new episode out. We really appreciate that. And share with a friend if you feel like what we're talking about is valuable to you. Try to share with someone. We want to make the show grow, and that's one of the best ways we can do it. So we're hoping you guys help us out with that. So, Anthony, software and, well, really just technology evaluations. I think a lot of co-ops do it differently. Obviously, you're trying to get to whatever's best, whether it's, an AMI vendor or a new piece of hardware. Maybe you're evaluating a new laptop, but what do you guys like? How do you guys start when you're doing any type of evaluation? You got a piece of software, you feel like maybe it's not working out for you. What's your first step?
The first thing that we start off with is the why. A lot of times people will ask for things and not really have thought it through. It feels like I'm challenging people sometimes, but I want to make sure if we're going to do the effort to start evaluating something, why do we need this product? What is it going to do for us? And then after that, the next big thing is just getting the right people involved. And we've really revamped that before. If I go back to my first days at Fort County, we would just kind of look at it internally and just roll it out without having other departments and stuff like that involved. And now we do a deep dive on who's going to be involved and really think a lot about that.
I like that. Starting with the why. I think we try to do that. I'm not sure that we do it every time. One thing I have found, and I'm sure you found this too, is when people ask you for something, especially around hardware, they're really thinking individually, kind of just to them, like how it affects them, maybe even software as well, but especially hardware, how this affects me. I need a new monitor. I need XYZ thing. And having everybody, no matter what you're starting to evaluate, look at the big picture, I think really helps because we have a lot of requests sometimes for something in particular, but then we say, hey, well, if we do this for this person, we're really evaluating whether or not it makes sense for 25 people, not just one. I agree with you there. And I also agree on the second point. We've really not done, or in the past, maybe 5 years, I would say, we've done a lot better. We actually saw a conference presentation. It was called From the User Out. I think it was at a Tech Advantage conference maybe like 3 or 4 years ago. It really rocked me, I guess, a little bit. It talked about when we're evaluating new things, hardware, software, otherwise, we need to actually start the closest to the person that's going to be using it. I think that goes right along with what you're talking about as well. One thing that really struck me, and I think we have maybe a tougher time with, I want to kind of pick your brain on, is how do you figure out the right size team? So you're getting these people together, the right people, like how many people is the right size?
Yeah. And I would hate to have a hard, fast number on that. I'm going to go with just a big thing. And this really isn't, it was a migration, but in doing so, like we evaluated that we wanted to do this migration for a financial information system. And yes, we want a bunch of people involved. We basically set up like a core group of probably about 4 or 5 people. But what we would do is to help people feel like they're part of the process is at certain points in time, we would bring in a larger group. I don't know that we've really done that before, but thinking back about it, I think it's worked out really well because a lot of people, they don't need to be involved in every single process and like all the workup stuff, but you want like that core group. And then when we get to the ins and outs of going into the details of some of the processes, that's when we would have probably like 10, 11 people maybe that we would reach out to as the main group. But for the most part, we were just working with that core group of 4 or 5 people.
That makes sense. I think we need to do a better job of that. I think we do a pretty good job of kind of defining a decent sized group. Sometimes we go a little bit higher. It is really tough because you want to get everyone's opinion. And a lot of times you feel like you need a lot of people's opinions throughout the process. But at the same time, I have seen teams get really big and it feels like you don't have progress or unity if you have a group of like, we'll say 15 people and you have them the whole way through, sometimes they end up subdividing anyway. It's hard to get consensus on something. So I like the idea that you were just mentioning, kind of the tactical groups, kind of, or like tactically bringing it bigger, making it smaller, maybe even having like a subgroup. Maybe if the core, there's like 2 people, they can go and actually talk to 4 or 5 people, get some feedback. Maybe that's also could be potentially a possibility. So, do you guys do anything differently if it's like a company project or evaluation versus like something that mainly you guys, because there are IT projects, right? We have things like maybe we're looking at an EDR tool or something like that. That's not something we're going to involve a bunch of people. Do you guys is your process pretty similar, whether it's like an IT specific project or something that kind of affects the whole company?
It depends on what it is. So like if you're looking at a phone system, I think it's good to get input. If you're evaluating two factors, I don't think there's anything wrong with having people outside, but for the most part, like when we look at EDR and stuff like that, we're really not reaching out to the other departments. But, like for a phone system, if it's something that, yes, it's kind of like an IT function, but it does impact other people, which I say that like a lot of everything impacts other people, no matter how you shake it out, they impact other people. But I guess really just if there's end users directly tying into like a phone system, would have people involved, but I don't know about the core IT systems and stuff like that.
I would say we kind of do the same thing. It seems like recently more of the what I would consider core IT system evaluations, more and more that seems like there's more user connectivity into that. MFA would be a
Mhm.
good example. It affects the users quite a bit. Not on the back end side of things, like how it can do SAML, but more on like how does it work? How easy is it to get another device added? But we would do the same thing. Like if it's a new core switch or we're upgrading our servers or something like that. We would just we would scale it and add people as needed. Something for us that's been big goes back to that presentation I talked about being objective. I know that's not something that we have always done. Early on in my career, there's a lot more of gut feeling this is the right thing. How do you guys do that? You have some sort of objective way to go about and actually select the right person or the right company?
So well, I guess let me just say this for everything that we're talking about. Make yourself like stay in certain lines when you're evaluating things. Sometimes I think you gotta be open to doing things different. And every project, piece of software, every vendor that you're gonna partner with, it's so different. But I would say overall, just to kind of answer your question, a lot of times we really don't have a checklist. We have done that where we evaluated and just kind of had like these are the must-haves that we want and these are things that would be kind of nice to have. And we do the demos and kind of do a little write up. Typically, we would just do something in Excel when we do that. But a lot of times we do just, you know, sit there and just with our own thoughts and take notes and just kind of come back at the end and discuss it. It depends on what it is. If it's a long, drawn out process, you need that documentation for sure. I don't think it hurts to have a documentation period. But if it's something that you're going to be evaluating for 6 months, people are going to forget stuff. So you've really got to do some kind of documentation as you're evaluating things.
We do try to create a sheet for the bigger things, at least the non-IT things, but even some of the IT things. Like we did a SAN evaluation a few years ago, and we evaluated about six or seven different vendors before we actually saw anyone. If you're going to make a sheet, you 100% need to do it before you see the first demo. You cannot do it like we're going to see a round of demos, then we're going to objectively rate people. No, you can't do that. You got to figure out what are the key things. I think you've said this like even prior episodes on the podcast, like what are the wants and the needs, right? Like these are things that we really absolutely have to have. And these are the things that would be nice to have. You need to figure out and have that a sheet of like that. And I would say a lot of times when people are making these objective sheets, they focus only on feature set. And you need to not only focus on feature set, you also need to talk about like some of the basic foundational things. I know it seems kind of crazy, but like reliability, how they're going to do patching, some of these things that seem like if we're doing a new piece of software, that's not a cool thing to talk about. You know what I mean? We're like, what cool thing can it help us do? But sometimes I have found that like those cool things kind of get hamstrung by some of those other things. If reliability is not in a good place, If they're unwilling to patch it, I mean, today's day and age, if they're unwilling to patch it quickly, I mean, we're taking things offline. We've done that with vendors where we had something that we used, maybe it was public on the internet, and it was very useful to us, and people just wouldn't patch, and so we would take it offline. And so, what good is a great feature set if you're doing that kind of thing? So, I would say definitely have that in. And one thing that we do and is weight individual things because obviously, like let's say we're evaluating that SAN that I talked about. Performance and reliability on a SAN are like the number one things. How well it does file shares, that's a great thing, but that's 6 or 7 down the list. So you do need to weight that because otherwise you'll get a situation where like a cool feature will just like put a vendor ahead when in reality maybe that's 5% of what you need from that product. So I definitely think that helps. But I agree with you. If it's a small project, or maybe it's something we're only seeing like a demo or two of, maybe we wouldn't go through that. But if it's anything more, anything we're doing like a proof of concept on, if it's that deep, we'll definitely write up some sort of objective list of what we want.
One thing I'd want to add to that, just because sadly we've had it, and this really isn't so much, we don't have this interdepartmental, but we've had big projects to where one thing I found, and we've done it, is we don't ask everyone for their feedback together. Because if you get a big group of people, and sometimes you have some strong personalities, and they can push people to kind of change what they say. And so that's something I would keep in mind if you're doing something where there's a lot of people involved. You may want to just do like one-on-one interviews and have them share that data. So we have done that because definitely people can persuade other people to kind of align.
Yeah, 100%. In fact, I would suggest you like vote anonymously instead of doing an interview. Like if we're down to 2 vendors, I would say, hey, we got a little box here. Just walk by and put in who you think's the best out of these 2. Because a lot of times if you're down to 2, it's pretty close. It's not like it's like one is terrible and the other one is the best thing ever. Otherwise, you're not even to that point. But you're right. People can do a lot of persuading. And I would say to the IT leaders out there, something that I've learned recently that I've been kind of terrible about in the past is giving my opinion too early when we're doing evaluations. And I think really it's not just IT leaders, it's leaders in general. I think a lot of times we need to be the last person to actually say what we think, whether that's with a project and an evaluation or even just anything, any type of group setting, either a meeting, a group email. A lot of times it's our internal kind of how we want to help. We're like, I feel like if you're an IT person, you've got that helpfulness built in and you want to give an answer quickly, but letting your team respond or letting your team give their ideas first is really critical because as soon as the leader puts out their idea, it's going to be very difficult for anyone to really have a drastically different idea. Maybe there's going to be something around the edges, convince us to do a different wood, but there's no way we're having carpet in any room in that house because I've already kind of set the framework for how we're going to do things. And as the leader, they're not going to want to challenge you, especially not in a public setting, but probably not even in private with too much of an off the wall idea because they know where you're rooted, where you're anchored, and they're not going to want to push too far off of that. So that's just something that I've recently learned. So I wish I had picked up on that years ago, but it's been something that's really helped me.
I did want to backtrack just a hair on the first item part of the why. And one thing I think for IT people, getting the why is important because we've got all these tools and your end users or the other departments, they may not be aware that you can solve that with a solution you already have in place.
Yeah, and I would say trying to get people to think outside the box too. A lot of times when you're doing an evaluation, even when you're making these objective things, I could guarantee that in some of the software evaluations we've done, we'll get a list to give a kind of an example of like, let's say we're building a house and if I'm the leader of the team and I say we should have hardwoods in the whole house and they should be, I don't know, oak. Someone might come together and the list will look exactly like the product we're saying we don't like and we want to go away from. It's like, we want this, but the reports need to look like this, and the exporting process needs to work like that. So you do have to steer it a little bit if you're the leader of an evaluation, or even if you're not the leader, if you're just a larger voice inside the evaluation team. You do want to get people to kind of think of not replacing what we have and making it incrementally better, but what could be? What if we got rid of all the preconceived notions that we had about how we do whatever this software does? Could we take it from, let's say it's a 8, and everybody wants it to be an 8.2, could we make it a 10? I mean, it could be a 10 maybe if we really like kind of opened our minds and we're pretty willing to look in any direction possible.
Yeah, that's something we've definitely had a big focus on, and I think it's helped us quite a bit. So when we migrated from our UPN to Meridian FIS, the financial information system, and not just them, but also the customer side too, we've been beating down everyone's head. Like the whole point of doing this is so we can change our processes so we can make them better. And I think that really helped a lot because the new system didn't work exactly like the old system, but because they hadn't heard it for these last 2 years, literally for 2 years, they've been hearing the whole point of this is so we can modernize our processes and make them better. I think that helped a lot with the buy-in and that, and people just accepting the application for how it worked. And, we did make some changes to make it work how they needed to, but people were much more receptive. And I think it was a very successful migration, and I think that helped quite a bit.
I mean, I think framing that early too, especially like a large project like you're talking about, you kind of need to get that. You really need to remind people early and often, because we've had a long evaluation. We had like, I don't think it took maybe a year and a half, really big project. And you kind of need that reminder a lot of times as you're going through, because there's so many demos, so many delays and laggy periods where you're waiting. Maybe you're having to send a contract to a legal team or something like that. You always kind of got to remind yourself of like why you're doing it and what are you trying to get out of it. So after you, like, I think me and you kind of do a similar thing. Depending on the size project, we're making an objective list. We're kind of putting down on that list all the things that are important to us. And I think ideally weighting them and saying like, well, this is really important and everything's important, but this is something that maybe we could live without. I know vendors, first thing they want to do every time we're evaluating something, they just want to take us right to a demo, right? Do you guys have, you have anything like I don't know, do you guys do anything special for demos? Is there anything that you go through in a demo that helps you in this evaluation process other than maybe the metrics you came up with?
I don't know that this is the angle you're going, but I think this is something worth sharing that we do with the demos or haven't done and have learned. I think we've been consistent at talking to the vendor before they do the demo. We've had some where they'll do a demo and, they're not looking at it from how they don't even know why we want to go to the product, and the way they're showcasing it, it's horrible. It's just a waste of everyone's time. And we've had some systems where we told the vendor what we wanted and they just didn't listen. And they chose to demo in a way that no one appreciated it. And honestly, I can't believe we did this, but it was just because we knew some people that worked with it and their support was like, it's the best support we ever get. So we let them demo it 3 times and gave them feedback before the first one and after each one. The last demo they did was much better, but anyway, that's not a normal thing, and I wouldn't recommend doing that. I've learned that up front, you need to talk to the people giving the demo, and this isn't to like help them sell their product. Some vendors do have it right, and they know how to demo their product, but more and more, I'm seeing people demoing their products so poorly, and you're not getting what you need out of the demo, and it's just a big waste of time, and it's frustrating for everyone involved. So that's something that let it slide. Sometimes I would do that, and then sometimes I would just like, they got it. We'll just let them do the demo. And that's the wrong answer I'm learning almost every time. And so we did a demo 6 months ago, and it wasn't one where we could pick other vendors. It was either we rolled this product out or we didn't. And everyone saw it, and it was demoed very poorly, and everyone's like, nah, we don't want it. And there's some of us that know some of the things that we'll do and really want it, but just the way demo went. So we're going to re-demo it next year, and we work with the vendor and told them like all the things that we need to see and what we're wanting to get out of it. And anyways, we're gonna kick it back off next year because there's nothing worse than rolling out a product that people don't support.
Absolutely. Vendors, if you're listening, I know we have a few. I've seen some LinkedIn comments. I don't know if they're listening only to get a demo with us to the podcast, but vendors, if you're listening, have someone that is good at demoing software, demo your software. Just because you know what the software does not mean you're a good demoer. How many times have you, as anyone, I know Anthony and I would both raise our hands, but how many times have you went to a presentation on something? The person was super intelligent, but terrible at presenting it. So we have had that. And man, it's almost a cataclysmic effort to pick a product when the first thing you hear is a terrible demo. We have had a few recently, and I agree with you. It has gotten a lot worse. I don't know if it's just because there's fresher people or what the deal is. But yeah, we've had some bad ones recently. We have to really be interested in something to even make it past another demo if it's terrible. If a person can't demo the product well and paint it in a good light, then what's the operation of the product going to be like? You know what I mean?
I hate to generalize, but the really bad demos have been either software engineers or just like electrical engineers. Sometimes just because they know the product, just like you said, you definitely don't want them showcasing it. Like you want someone that sees why the software or the application or whatever it is you're looking at is appealing and what do they do better than their competitors. Oh, I've seen engineers, they just like, well, this is how it works. This is how it works. And when you ask them a question, well, it'll do however you want it to do. Anyways, you don't want politician answers. You want real life examples. You want, obviously, if you can get your own data in there, you'd prefer to have your own data in there. But if they got to have like dummy data or test data in there, at least make it look relevant. That definitely helps a lot.
Yeah, so a little PSA engineers, we still love you, but 100% agree. Sometimes the people that are really intelligent, I think they're really good people to have on the call. I would say they need to be part of the demo team, but they just don't need to be the primary presenter because there's many times whenever the primary presenter is going to just be a better speaker, orator, typically. And then if we have a deep question, like you want that engineer there, you want that guy being like, oh yeah, it's here and here, something like that. The only thing I would really add on the demo front, kind of getting the most out of demos is remind the people that are presenting you, or I guess maybe this is again a PSA to those doing demos is don't just talk negatively about your competition. Tell me why you are valuable, not only why you're better than somebody else. Because just being a little better than somebody else doesn't really come off to me as being very innovative. I mean, if I get a steak, right, and maybe it's at a restaurant, steak and potatoes, and someone else makes me a steak and garlic potatoes, that's great. But what if there's some sort of root vegetable I've never tried before and a cut of steak, maybe it's tri-tip, maybe it's not even regular steak. It's like you throw that on a platter and maybe I'll found my next favorite meal. But am I really going to be that much more impressed? I'm just getting like a little bit better. So focus on value that you're offering in the demo. And then if you have to, I would say the other thing when you're doing evaluations to get the most of the demo is run the demo yourself. Don't let the vendor run the demo. If it's not going the way you want it, just stop them right there and say, nope, that's not what we want to see. We want to see this. Don't waste an hour or 2 hours of your time going through a demo that doesn't address the things you need.
Yeah, that's something I hate interjecting in demos, but like if someone's got to speak up or you're just going to waste your time, like you said. And I guess the other thing that's helpful is if you just know the people that, you know, are going to be sitting on the demo. There's a person at our co-op where if we do a demo and they spend a half hour on introductions, like they're checked out. Like it's too late. It doesn't matter. Oh, I say that they wouldn't completely check out, but like they'll be very frustrated by the time we get into it. That's something where I think just doing a little pre-work, give whoever's doing the demo just a little talk on things like that. And I always tell them, like, if that person's involved, if you're doing introductions, it better be like 90 seconds at the max. I would suggest just saying, hey, this is who we are, and let's get into it. So I definitely think prepping the people doing the demo, having a conversation with them, it helps out a lot.
Yeah, quick introductions, and I don't need a company history every time I have a demo with somebody. It's like these are all of our clients. So we got started in 1942. You know, I don't know, but I always think that's funny. There's always like a little like 5 slides, like guaranteed 5 slides before we get to a demo. I'm like, just get to the demo, right? So let's say we get past the demo. We involved the right people. We've made our objective things, our objective list. We've kind of went through the demo with the objective list. Now we have maybe the leader in the clubhouse. What do you guys do? I know we like to do references as well. Like we'll go and actually have an individual call, or like, do you guys have a process for how you do references? I mean, is there so many you have to select, or is it just kind of variable, or how do you guys do that?
The only standard we have is we try not to call the references that the company gives us. Because if they give you a reference, then they're going to say good things. So we'll ask for references and we may speak with them. We will 100% call someone else. That's important, is to get someone that's unsolicited, that, isn't one of on their fan club, to talk about the product or whatever it is you're looking at.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. I would also say have someone in your industry and out of your industry if you can. Let's say you're a co-op, right? If you can find like maybe just a random other company that uses your product, talk to both of them just so you don't get trapped in like, this is how this particular industry uses it, and you see more perspective there. Definitely agree. Just find people that don't use the people on their list if you can help it, unless you know them personally, in which case, sure, that's fine. Maybe you've heard of them or you have a relationship, you've talked to them, you're aware of them already. So that's kind of how we do it as well. We don't really have a number. It just depends. If it's a really big project, we'll probably do 4 or 5. If it happened to be something that's like $1 million, then of course we're going to do quite a bit more than if it's $10,000. But one thing that we've done, and actually we've done that with you a few times, is instead of just calling someone and saying, how do you like it? Try to have the person we're calling just do us a quick little demo of what they're doing in it. But instead of just being like, how do you like it? Do you think it's reliable? Show me how y'all use it. Pop it up, and what kind of cool things have you done with it? Let's say they've been doing something for a year. If you've been using it for a year and I look over your shoulder and you have a tough time figuring out where things are, then I know it's probably not as intuitive of software to use. But the guys that are doing the demos are in it every day. I mean, they're going to be snapping most of the time, unless they're that bad demo variety. So we try to do that as well. It just feels like sometimes we'll get a better demo. I know this is sad, but sometimes we'll get a better demo from a reference than we will from the actual vendor. So we've done that as well.
Tanner, I got a question, and I can't remember if it was you that told me this or someone else, but do you also look at like the Glassdoor reviews or like just reviews like on Google and stuff like that? Are you the person that told me about that?
So I would say we might do that. And actually, it's kind of something we forgot. So I'm glad you brought it up. We kind of went right into talking about the why, and we might have skipped over how we figure out which ones to start evaluating. That is where I don't know if not Glassdoor per se, but that actually is a good idea. Like, what do the employees think of it, right? But we'll definitely look on Reddit. If it's something that's not industry specific, because obviously there's not as much on Reddit about that, but let's say we're looking for an EDR solution, like I mentioned, then we'll definitely look on Reddit. Like, what are you guys using for EDR? See what people are doing on Reddit, different companies. A lot of times you'll hear like, this is really tough to use. I really love this. It came in handy doing this particular thing. And that helps us get like a list of people. So then we usually take like, okay, well, for patch management, there seems to be like 5 big players. These are the 5 players. And we'll also tap into any type of industry groups we're in. We'll tap into that as well. Kind of say, hey, we're looking at a patch management solution. What are you guys using? That'll help us get a list together. Do your objective things before you talk to anyone or demo anything, because I think just like that leader saying something, if you read something, sometimes it can really anchor you in something. If you read a negative review about something, it can anchor you in a negative way, and you'll look at the demo in a negative way. I try to be as open-minded as I can when I'm doing demos. I think it's just the most respectful thing to do for both parties.
One thing I do want to add to that, for any vendor that has a mobile app, like, people are going to look up the Google reviews or the Apple reviews on your thing. And I'm really disappointed. A lot of the vendors that we work with, like, they don't have a heavy focus on it. And you can tell because you just look at the reviews, like the reviews are terrible in a lot of the mobile apps. That's something that, I mean, things are just changing. They've already changed. Like, people use their phones more than computers for the most part. I think having a heavy focus on a strong mobile app is something, but definitely, I know we look at that anytime there's a mobile app involved. And if we see like something under a 3.0, like, that's a huge red flag.
Yeah, no, definitely. Oh, I think it comes back to, if you're going to do it with excellence, or just don't do it. I would rather see a vendor not have a particular feature than to have a feature that's really poorly implemented. So
Yeah.
pro tip for any vendors listening. But so Anthony, I know we haven't really talked about price. Obviously, I know price kind of plays a big role. We're past the demo stage. We've called some references. A lot of it comes down to price. How do you like, I struggle with this sometimes. So let's say we have a product A and it's $12,000 and product B that's $20,000. We'll say that's an annual thing. But you feel like product B is just a lot better, but it seems like overpriced. Like, I don't know. How do you land on that stuff? Like, how do you pick that apart?
So with that, we've definitely had some cases where we're like, wow, how can we justify this? Sometimes it's really easy to identify how you can justify it. Sometimes it's not. And so I'll give you an example. So we were shopping outage management systems. So this is basically how we identify who's out of power and who's not out of power on our electrical system. And we were looking at one and it was quite a bit more than what we were paying with the other. But we got to thinking like, and sometimes you can paint this how you want to, but we deal with storms almost every single year. And with Hurricane Florence, the cost per day to run was $1 million. If we were to shave off like 2 hours, like how much money is that? Like it was literally like enough to pay for the system. And I'm not saying that's going to happen. That's something you can't guarantee, but you do have to think about how it can save you. And we've got some tools where it may shave 30 minutes off of 4 people every single day. Like that's things you need to look at. And but just try to be honest with yourself and what you're evaluating and try to think through that.
Yeah, I think you've mentioned the TCO, or total cost of ownership. I think this is one of those where you have to take in not only what the product is going to do, but what the product is going to keep you from having to do. If there's a product that's better and it helps you save time, and I know in today's world, time is really like everything. Labor costs are high. So piece of software or even hardware, anything that's more reliable, takes less time to maintain, or offers a better feature set, more efficiency, you got to put that in there along with the price as well. And that's what we do. Obviously, within reason, everyone has a budget, right? But within reason, we try to think about price last after everything else. It's still obviously a really big thing, but we try to understand the entire cost of what the product's going to offer in what we're going to pay them, and also any type of savings we might get out of a better process.
One other thing I just want to mention with pricing, and obviously you're not going to do this with everything, but vendors can price so differently that a lot of times I find myself, and I'll do simple math, I'll put it in a spreadsheet, but I usually try to do the 5-year cost, because some you're going to have where they've got a high upfront cost and a low recurring, and some where it's nothing upfront and it's very alluring. Hey, we can get this in this year. But when you factor it out 5 years, it may be the highest cost solution. That's something where, just vendors price so differently these days. Like and sometimes we may not have a product for 5 years, but a lot of times if it's a significant amount, we're trying to do the math for 5 years out and see what it's going to cost. Cause you'll be surprised that, who really is the cheapest in a 5-year span.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Include those savings, include those efficiencies too. As labor cost is a real thing, to your point about going through that storm. It is a really big deal. We have a internal process where we are trying to figure out efficiencies, and honestly, some of the biggest ones have been ones that we just saved an hour a day of someone's time, or 30 minutes of someone's time, or maybe it's even an hour a week, especially when it's a position that maybe there's 12 of within your company. So Anthony, any final thoughts on evaluations? I feel like we have kind of a similar process, but you guys have some things that I'm definitely going to take away after the conversation today.
Yeah, I guess with everything we said, I think both of us had pretty good advice, but like I said earlier, just don't paint yourself into a corner. You got to do what works for you. If you need to get 30 people involved versus what we said, do that. Just don't be afraid to try new things, but try to be consistent and to grow as you evaluate more vendors and products.
I think it's a great thought. One thing I can add, I would say, is know your company. When you're evaluating a hardware or software solution, know what you're going to be able to do. When you talk to these references, there may be a different skill set. There may be a different makeup of that company. Get the best thing that you feel like you can be effective and efficient with, and I'll always kind of relate that back to you no matter what. So All right, another episode of Off the Wire here. We'd love to hear from anyone out there. If you enjoyed this episode, let us know. If you have an episode idea, we'd love to have that. We actually had one. It's been a little while back now, but one of the listeners suggested it. It was a great episode. The one on, I think it was hygiene, account hygiene. Great episode. If you have any ideas for an episode, Anthony, I'd love to hear it. Just shoot us an email, show it offthewirepodcast.com, or you can reach out to us on social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, X, or otherwise. We release episodes every other Monday, and this is another episode of Off the Wire.